Monday, diehards, degenerates, my gamblers. How is everybody doing this week? Welcome back to the Die Hard MMA podcast. Your host, as always, your boy, your local degenerates, Clint here, taking you through yet another week of epic fights. We're coming off a good one. UFC Kansas City was good to us. As you can see, we are rocking the old Die Hard stimulus check, which, by the way, we got a lot of new viewers and fans. You guys can get these on pubsportsradio.com. If you have not gotten your old Die Hard stimmy check t-shirt, you need to head on over there and snag one. And we're rocking the gold, the money chain, as is tradition. 8 units, baby. 8 units. My boy Raw Dog Royval comes through by knockout at a 9-1 price tag. Whoo, that feels good. And then, but just a moment for all of us Pudilova backers. Damn it. I cannot believe they didn't give her that decision victory. Oh, well, I thought it was going to be just a horrific train wreck of a night when I started off getting robbed on Lucy Pudilova and then the second bet of the night just being an outright loser. I was like, oh no. Oh, turned out pretty okay. How is everybody doing this evening? We got Alan Loves MMA here in the chat. We got MMA Propaholic. What's going on, my friend? Thank you. We got Dream in the house. Mushroom, as always, hanging out. Mike Harvey, Grateful Dude. Joe Other, one of the Pub Sports Radio members here in the chat, along with Air Dog. What's up, Air Dog? We've got Sayat. We've got JSG Bufo on the beat. Travis M. Glenn Bot, Grateful Dude. I think I already said your name. Hope everybody's doing well. And for those of you who know, I like to degen out, not in MMA. Well, I do that. But I also like to degen out in the hockey streets. The playoffs have started. We've got NHL rocking and rolling. And who other to join me on this glorious Monday evening to talk mixed martial arts for the beginning of the NHL playoffs than my favorite Canadian, James Lynch. James, how are you doing this evening, my guy? Thank you for coming on the show.
I'm doing a lot better because I get to talk some MMA, possibly some hockey with you tonight. So very happy to be on, Clint, man. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, it has been way too long. You and I already got into a little bit of the hockey chit chat a little bit backstage before the show. So everybody buckle up. If we tangent, both of us have a screen off where we're keeping an eye on these NHL playoffs because that's what we do. That's what we do. James, how did you do last week? If you made any bets or if you had any picks or anything, how was UFC Kansas City to you?
I did all right. I went big on Bill Algeo, who ended up getting it done, which was nice. I had Holloway as well in the main event. I actually had the Holloway by decision prop, which I think I got it like -125. The odds were pretty good on that. Tanner Boser, I thought there was some value there. Tanner's a tough guy to take out. Ooh. And he gets finished in the first round there, so that was tough. And the Pudilova decision, I also had her in a parlay or two, so that kind of sucked as well. But overall, came out on top with some profits, so that was nice. Bill Algeo was the one that I was kind of heavy on because I really like that matchup against TJ Brown. So
beautiful, James. You love to see it. I had a moment last week. I don't know if you saw my tweet, but I had to slap myself because Bill Algeo has been a guy that's been a money train for me. I have backed him fight in and fight out. And when he first got to the UFC, people said he was a bum and he couldn't keep up. And the whole time I've been going, no, he's well-rounded. No, he's skilled. No, he's got a good gas tank. Like, he just keeps on trucking and doing the damn thing. And for God knows what reason, now that everybody suddenly thinks Bill Algeo is okay and he's a 2-1 favorite, I thought I should try and look the other way and try to make money betting against him now that he's overvalued. And I caught myself. That was a mistake I made last year, and I made that mistake a lot where I kind of turned on my own fighter. And instead, I threw Bill Aljo in a parlay with Rafa Garcia, and I feel really good about that one because for me, 2023 has been all about correcting the mistakes of 2022. So identifying something that I did with regularity that cost me money, and then not only catching it, but full on reversing it and continuing to make cash on my guy instead of just, skipping the spot or something like that. That win felt really good for me too.
Yeah. No, it's always nice to get a couple of those going your way, right? To do well on the card and everything. It was a great card last week as far as a fight night goes. Really delivered.
It was really fun, but I do have to ask you though about that Tanner Boser stoppage. Do you think it was a little early, or do you feel like it was justified?
Listen, a guy who's interviewed Tanner forever. I know Tanner quite well. He's Canadian. I didn't have an issue with the stoppage. His arm was basically trapped. Like he couldn't get out, right? It was one of those stoppages. Like, the average casual fan's going to see that fight and say, Tanner Boser sucks. He deserves to get cut. Those types, right? But how I looked at it was he was in a bad position. He couldn't get out of it. It was just a weird stoppage. Like the stoppage was fine. It's just like you could see I think it was his right arm was kind of trapped against the cage, and then Kutlab was kind of teeing off on him. So Boser really couldn't get out of that position because Kutlab was kind of leaning on him, right? So it was very difficult for him to get out. And Tanner gets his first of all fighters to finish Tanner Boser. If you would have listed all his opponents in the UFC, I probably wouldn't have thought Kutlab would be the one to do it. But here we are. So.
Yeah, it kind of jumped out to me, James, is like maybe almost identifying the difference in class between weight classes, because Ion is like hanging on for dear life to his job at 205. Boser arguably could have got one or two good bounces, and he's a middle of the road heavyweight, drops down a class and gets steamrolled in the first. There might be a big levels jump between what guys can do at heavyweight and what they can do at 205 in the UFC, I think.
Could be, yeah, no, for sure. And just one more thing you were kind of mentioning about, regretting not going all in, or like your mind getting changed. For me, that was the Edson Barbosa fight. I should have bet Barbosa. Yeah. I should have played Barbosa. I just got scared off because of the Bryce Mitchell fight. It kind of made me think maybe Barbosa's on the decline, but he looked better than ever on Saturday, and another highlight reel finish for him. So that was one. If I do have one regret on the card, it's that I didn't give a closer look to Edson Barbosa in that fight.
Yeah, and that's one that I did avoid. I feel like, in betting, a penny saved is a penny earned, right? Sometimes not making a bet is just as, if not more important than making a bet. And I talked about how Billy Q is just reckless. He has no defense. That's exactly the kind of spot where Barbosa can land a bomb. So I kind of picked Billy Q to win, but I was like, I cannot lay that kind of a price tag with him. I didn't quite get to pulling the trigger on Barbosa. I see a lot of people in the chat who did, and congratulations to you animals that had the balls to bet on him, because that was a great bet if you did. All right, folks, we have, I think, teed this one up enough. Let's go ahead and get on to this week. UFC Vegas 71. We're back in the Apex, baby. The first fight of the night is going to be Brady Hiestand taking on Danaa Batgerel. And remember, everybody, you are watching Pub Sports Radio. We are live right here. Do us a favor. Subscribe if you haven't already. Smash the like button at the least. And then these lines are presented to you by Superbook Sports. James, this is a very interesting chess match to me right off the bat for this one. So Batgerel is 3-3 here in the UFC. He's had a bit of a tough road. He's a knockout artist, always tries to move forward. He's got good head movement. He's got a good, strong jab. He feints that lead left hook a lot, sets up his power right hand really well. Honestly, I've been on Danaa Batgerel quite a bit, and if it wasn't for the ridiculous spinning back fist knockout, it looked like he was taking the lead there a little bit in that fight. So very impressive run if you think about it for being 3-3. Definitely think he belongs in the UFC. But that 2-0 skid is concerning. You can always get your walking papers if you take that third loss in this organization. Brady Hiestand, still a brand new face to the UFC. 6-2, dropped his UFC debut. The Tough Championship was a split decision loss to Ricky Turcios, but he's gone 1-0 since then. He did go ahead and beat Fernie Garcia, but that fight wasn't without its red flags. If you remember, in that very first round, he got clocked by Fernie and dropped in that first round. He recovered well. He got the wrestling game plan going again, worked his way back into that fight. but he's a young kid, James. He's 23 years old. He's training at a good spot. He's working with guys like Aljo and Merab. You love to see that. Seems like he's got a good gas tank, but his main path to victory seems to be his grappling. And honestly, I've just seen too many mistakes. There were times where he got swept, times where he got reversed. People can just kind of explode and buck him off. I don't think he's got the man strength yet. I feel like that's a thing that kind of happens when you hit that 25, 26 years old range. And he doesn't appear to quite have that just yet. This is a spot where I'm kind of sitting pat at the moment, James, because you've got Bakary down to a minus 135 favorite, and Hiestand opened up as like a plus 200 underdog. He's damn near even money here at this point. I know a lot of people are jumping in on Hiestand, and at plus 200, I get it. But when you've got a guy like Danaa Bakary making the move over to my favorite camp at Fight Ready, I think this might be a buy low spot for Danaa Bakary, and I think I'm looking at the favorite side if I'm going to make a bet. Haven't pulled the trigger yet, but that's kind of the way I'm leaning here. What about you?
I'm on the same side as you here. And I know Brady quite well. I actually called one of his fights on the regional scene a couple of years ago when he fought Chad and Helliger, a fight that he ended up losing, but a fight that he was winning. He just kind of ran out of steam in the third round. Chad was able to take advantage and finish him in that fight. But you mentioned the Tercios fight, the Fernie Garcia fight. They haven't been flawless performances, and that loss we should mention that he had in his UFC debut was a split decision loss, but still, I don't think there's any people feeling like Brady got the nod there. But yeah, you mentioned with Danaa, the power, the level of opposition as well. I'm really big on that. Like, you even go back and look at some of the guys that Brady has fought, regionally, maybe not as strong as some of the other opponents that we have there too. I'm more on the Danaa side, but this is one I'm actually just kind of staying away from because I think there's potential with Brady, right? And you mentioned it there, and I did speak to him ahead of this fight. You can find the interview on my channel, youtube.com/LynchOnSports under the UFC Vegas 71 playlist. But, I asked him, what's the confidence level like getting to work with a guy like Merab or Aljo or these, high-level bantamweights? And, it definitely has helped. So I think that's one thing he was missing back home in Spokane at his gym, not being able to get those really high-level bodies in his weight class. So I think that'll help, but you're kind of guessing at this point that he's improved, and that's going to be enough to beat Danaa in this fight. That's how I look at it. And right now, there's more evidence with us to work with Danaa. So that's why I'm going on that side. I just think he'll be able to get it done either by knockout or a decisive decision here. But I think he gets it done, but no bet for me on this fight.
Yeah, I'm kind of there with you, James, because I think Danaa is working obviously on that wrestling defense. What else are you going to Fight Ready for but to work on your grappling game and your wrestling defense? And he's big, he's really strong. I've never really said that he's got a gas tank problem or anything like that before, so I think he'll be okay to go 15 minutes. And the fact that Brady just kind of shoots in blindly, he leaves himself open, he's very hittable. He could get banked at any point in time in this fight. And I think with a guy like Danaa, that's all it takes is maybe just one good shot. So yeah, I'm with you there. I think I'm going to look at the Bakary side, but before I make any kind of a bet, I want to see how far down this line will go. I do think he's extremely live here in this spot, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we'll see.
All right, I like it. Next up, second fight of the evening, we've got Priscila Cachoeira taking on Karine Silva. Cachoeira, a nice, big, fat underdog here in this spot. After her last little run, seems almost a little bit disrespectful, James. She is 4-1 in her last 5. Priscila has been doing the dang thing. She's coming off sparking Lipski in round 1. We know Ariane Lipski is not the most durable fighter in the world, but that was still a really impressive win. She's 34 years old, is Priscila Cachoeira. Big, physical, strong, hits really hard. She's a little bit too reliant, I think, on that power for a women's MMA fighter for me. I know it's a rare thing at this weight class, especially in the women's division, to have that kind of power. So it's okay, I guess, that she relies on it, but she's not the most technical. Her ground game really still is a work in progress. She struggles with these slick BJJ artists, and she's only got 65% takedown defense. You go back and you look at like the Gina Mazzani fight. If Gina wasn't a gas bag and didn't tire out 7 minutes into the fight, she probably just doesn't have an answer there. So it's a big question mark here with her. Now, Karine Silva, 15-4. She's 29 years old. That's a little older than I expected. Obviously not a negative or anything like that, but I kind of had in my brain that she was like 25 or 26. She's coming in 1-0 off the Dana White's Contender Series. striking at range was something she struggled with a little bit in her last fight. She kind of felt uncomfortable at kickboxing range. She does have fast hands. She does have a little decent jab on her, but she throws naked kicks from like way outside, and a slick striker will be able to take advantage of that. Karine Silva actually has a big right hand herself, though. She landed a huge right hand on Polyana that kind of scored the knockdown and led to the grappling transition that won her the fight. That's where she really shines. Karine Silva is excellent in jiu-jitsu. She is willing to play off of her back, which is a little concerning. I don't like backing fighters that do that in this day and age. Most people know how to defend the armbar. We know it's kind of the go-to in women's MMA, though it can still be very effective from down there. But she only needed 10 seconds of top time to get the finish on her last opponent. So you just cannot let her get a dominant position on you. My question, James, is whether or not she'll be able to get the takedown. Because Priscila is big, Priscila is strong. And if you watch Karine Silva's regional scenes, unless she's getting a knockdown, it's her opponents taking her down. She always has to rely on getting that sweep. She always has to rely on climbing her guard up over the shoulders and hitting a triangle choke or an arm bar. And we know Priscilla's not taking anybody down. So if she can't get this to the mat, what does this fight look like? I think I've got to pick Karine Silva to eventually find her way to the mat. You know, it's just kind of a Priscila Cachoeira thing. Eventually she'll slip up. She will make a mistake, or her takedown defense might just be suspect enough that Silva can get her there. Once it does, I do think the fight will eventually be over. But I don't want to lay minus 190 to find out if that's going to happen. So I'm going to side with the favorite here, but I'm a little too scared to bet it. What about you, James? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's dog or pass if you're gonna bet this fight. I really do feel that way because I don't think Silva's really blown us away in terms of some of her performances. The last fight, obviously, a nice submission victory in the debut, but it's one of those interesting questions here. Priscilla's looked good in what 4 of her last 5 fights, but the competition's not great, right? Like Gina Mazzani not in the UFC, Shauna Dobbs not in the UFC, Ariane Lipsky barely holding on to a job. So is it that she's that good, or is it that she's fighting easier competition? I don't know. Regardless, she's got more experience than Silva does. So that's another concern as well. Just the one UFC fight for Silva. Silva should win, but like, I just can't, even at that, like, I know the price isn't like crazy high, but it's still something that's not enough for me to bet. So I'm going to pick Silva to possibly edge it out, maybe a decision, something around there. But yeah, this is one, again, I'm kind of staying away from.
Yeah, for me, this is the fireball and popcorn fight of the night to get us started here. It's going to be plenty entertaining. I just don't think I need to have any money on it. The one way, now the totals aren't out just yet. I might look at an under. I don't mind maybe a violence bet here because if Silva cannot get Cachoeira to the ground, I'm not sure she can kickbox with her for 15 minutes and avoid a big power shot. And frankly, we've seen what happens to Cachoeira on the mat. So I do think there's plenty of finishing upside for both fighters. I could get behind an under here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a little. You're a lot more confident because I do see you bet unders a lot. When it comes to women's fights, I just tend not to bet unders unless it's like Andrade or someone like that fighting that has some like serious power. But I just get so worried because like even when you think someone's out, like maybe they survive and then the fight goes on and you're kind of like, damn, why did I play that? So yeah, but I understand where you're coming from for sure on that.
It definitely happens. Women's MMA unders tend to be harder than men's MMA unders for sure. Yeah. My guy Billy Briz in the chat, though, doesn't mind it. Give me some violence, death taxes, and catch a beating under 2.5. I like it. I like it. Mike Harvey in the chat asking Dana White Contender Series fade? Question mark. Now, if you remember, though, Mike, the fade angle only applies on their very first fight in the UFC. So since Karine Silva has already had one UFC fight under the banner, under the big lights, she's no longer eligible for the angle. Just bear that in mind. We do have a great question here, though, from Genova asking if you have interviewed the Cage Warriors, James Lynch, or not.
Of course I have. Yeah. I actually, every fight, his last 3 fights, Jamie Lynch, I've interviewed him. You can find that interview on my other YouTube channel, youtube.com/LynchMMA. We have, I think, 3 interviews. He's a nice guy. He's actually from California. He doesn't live that far away from me. So.
That's awesome. Now, see, I know that answer, but I had to tee it up. It was a great question for the other people.
Yeah, no, of course, it's awesome, and people think like I think it's hilarious that I have someone that has the exact same name as me, and they're doing pretty well in MMA. So there you go.
It's pretty awesome. You guys got to keep it going because if he keeps going, goes on a run, makes it to the UFC like the James Lynch and Damie Lynch thing, it's going to be fun.
I agree. Yeah. No, I'm looking forward to it. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Good stuff, man. We got over 100 live viewers already. Thank you all for joining us here for the NHL playoffs and, of course, UFC Vegas 71. I almost said 271. I'm on the pay-per-views on my brain for some reason. Here we go. Next up, we've got Francis Marshall taking on William Gomis. And we've got a pick 'em on our hands here, James. We've got a Dana White's Contender Series kid who is all the rage, taking on William Gomis, who's kind of a little unheralded, I feel like, at this point here. Now, Francis Marshall, 7-0, undefeated, 1-0 off the Contender Series, lightning fast jab. This kid's hands are slick. You love to see it. Tight boxing, uses his hands to set up his level changes, kind of wades his way in forward, strikes in combinations to get in, strong body lock, explosive takedowns. I like Francis Marshall, James. There's not a lot of these Contender Series kids that I feel like are legitimate. I feel like we've got a lot of maybes, a lot of short turnarounds, 2 or 3 fights in the UFC, and then they get the boot type of kids. There's a couple gems out there, and I think Francis Marshall might be one of them. Really exciting young prospect. Gomis, on the other hand, is 11-2. This kid has nice footwork, comes out of Aries FC, which, shameless little plug here. We will talk about Spectation Sports, who's one of these sponsors on the show a little bit later. We know William Gomis because he came out of that Aries FC fighting organization. We've kept an eye on it a little bit as we go forward.
Sorry, just got to interrupt you for a second. There's 2 Aries FC promotions, right?
Oh, you are
so there's
right.
Aries. Okay, and the only reason I know this is because I do work for the American one. You're talking. He fought. So William Gomis, I didn't even know if it's Gomis how you pronounce it, but I'll take your word for it. But he's from France. That's Aries F. What do we got here? Let me just find it. Aries FC. So Aries Fighting Championships. That's the one in France. That's Fernand Lopez's promotion. The one that you're thinking of is Tim Lloyd's promotion, the American one that Trevor Peake came out of, and a few of the other American fighters, right?
You are absolutely correct.
Yeah,
because
they
the Trevor
got
Peake organization is the one I've been keeping an eye on.
yeah. Don't worry about it. Yeah, just sorry. Obviously not good etiquette here from the guests, but I just wanted to let you know that there are 2 Aries F. So there's Aries FC, which is Fernand Lopez's promotion, and there's Aries Fighting Series, which is Tim Lloyd's promotion. There's a difference.
No. Perfect etiquette from the guest, James, because as well as I do, I will get 20 comments. The comment section of this video will be lit up with that correction if you didn't do it live here, and I'd look like an idiot next week. So thank you for correcting me there. At any rate, Will is coming in here, and you know what, James? He really strikes me as a guy that UFC is going to have a hard time getting off their books. He's not exciting, but he's going to win fights. He stays at range. He's got nice footwork. He's hard to hit, flashy striking, but he's kind of a decisionator. When he decides to change levels, he's got decent timing on his level changes. He's got good ground control when he gets down there. He does have 6 wins on his record by knockout, but like I said, he's got a lot of decisions on this run. I think he's going to be a thorn in the side of the UFC now that he's here. I think he's going to steal a couple of decisions. He's not going to be overly exciting, but he's going to find his way to getting his hand raised. And this is really a perfect test here for both guys. Everyone's super excited about Francis Marshall. I feel like he's got the hype behind him, but Will is very live in this fight. I get behind the pick'em price tag here. I'm not going to bet this fight. This is definitely a take notes type of situation here for me. I would not be at all surprised if Will Gomis found a way to pull the upset here in this spot and steal this fight. The one thing I want to make mention of here real quick, though, before I kick it to you, James, is I made these tiles this morning. Let me go ahead and pull this back up here for you guys to take a look at, because this bad boy was a -110 when I made these this morning. Francis Marshall is -200 right now. Will Gomis is +175. I am not sure what the hell happened there. I'm not sure if it's just the hype kicking in or if somebody knows something, but there's been a huge move to Francis Marshall going into this fight, and I am curious what you make of that and how you think this fight goes.
Wow, there's a lot thrown at me here, but I can handle it. It's no, I'm kidding. So as far as the money coming in, I'm not really sure what the reasoning is for that. I've always seen Francis as the favorite, at least on most of the books. Like when I previewed my show yesterday, those are ones that. Or sorry, not yesterday. Today. What am I? I'm losing my mind here today. I did my UFC preview show today, not yesterday. But I think this fight reminds me of, to a way lesser extent, of the Raul Rosas Jr. and Christian Rodriguez fight, in the sense that you're putting 2 prospects against each other, and the UFC is kind of determining which one they think has more upside here. I personally think Francis Marshall's got the upside compared to Gomi, however you pronounce it. I just think that you see those little glimpses of like, hey, there's something here. And I think for me, this is a good opportunity for him to, take out a guy with a really good record, someone that's still also kind of working their way up. But I think ultimately Francis has got the skills to either, get the stoppage win or potentially win a decision here. But I really do like him in this fight. But saying that, I am aware of his opponents, like you said, Aries FC, that promotion up in France. They got some pretty solid matchmaking there, in terms of like level of opposition of who he's fought. So that scares me off a little bit. Not to mention he's got a slight height and reach advantage in this fight as well. So that's one other thing to consider. But yeah, I'm going to go Francis Marshall. Probably not going to bet this one either. I do have some bets on this card for people wondering. It's just these first couple ones. It's like, got to be smart about your spots. But I'm going Francis Marshall to get it done.
Okay, I'm right there with you, James. I'm going to pick Francis Marshall, but like I said, wouldn't be surprised if this thing was at all close. And I do have to apologize, guys. I actually think Superbook may have hung a bad line this morning or something along those lines or you know what? I'll be honest with you guys. I'm human, obviously. I could have just screwed this up. Like maybe I put those numbers in incorrectly because I am looking at like the numbers history here. And Gomi opened up at plus 330. So this thing never was or never should have been anywhere near a pick'em line. So it was either a bad line when I looked at it this morning or I just screwed up. So I want to apologize to everybody taking a look there at that number. But I don't hate the dog line, and that's still a lot of steam coming in on the underdog to take him from plus 330 all the way down to plus 380. That's still a massive move in the direction of one of these fighters. All right, let's move right along and forget that ever happened. Next up, we've got Mohammed Usman taking on Junior Tafa. This fight, ladies and gentlemen, is a pick'em, and I'm checking right now. I'm confirming before I, put my foot in my mouth here again for you guys. So we've got a pick'em on our hands here. Mohammed Usman, the brother of the champion here, Kamaru Usman, and Junior Tafa, who, James, correct me, you may know actually on this one. Obviously, this guy looks like he's Justin Tafa's brother. Are they in any way related? Do you know? Because I heard that they may not be.
I mean, they kind of look alike a little bit.
Look so alike.
I don't know that actually. I haven't had a chance. JHK, our buddy John Coe, he interviewed him. I know that, so maybe he revealed it in that interview. I didn't happen to check that interview out, but I'm glad you brought that up because I saw a few people message me being like, Justin Tafa's fighting Mohammed Usman. I'm like, no, not Justin. Junior. Junior's the one who hasn't made his debut yet. Remember, he's supposed to fight Austin Lane. And then that fight got moved. And so he actually hasn't fought since December when he fought for Ryzen. So that's, just to make sure there's no confusion there. This is Junior Tafa, not Justin.
Absolutely. So everybody try to keep that in mind. And this is a weird fight, James, a very, very weird fight. So Usman, 8-2. He's a big juiced up brute. I mean, this guy is absolutely monstrous in there. He's big. He is slow, but geez, does he have a lot of power, and he can generate that power from a very, very short space. He's really reliant on that power. I mean, he's a heavyweight, so that's not really much of a knock on him when you compare it to like, other weight classes or anything like that. I have never been high on Usman. I don't like this Usman. And frankly, I bet against him when they were doing the Ultimate Fighter finale. And I thought he was clearly losing that fight until he got bailed out with a bomb in that second round. But oh boy, Junior Tafa here is 4-0, completely untested. He's a kickboxer before he came over to MMA. He fought a bunch of brawling cans before he got his call up to the UFC. Obviously, he trains with some, the other Tafas, whether they're related or not. He trains with these heavyweight Tafas, so he kind of at least knows what he's doing. But he fires big looping punches. Everything is looping. He's got a nuke in his right hand. He moves pretty well for a big guy. He's pretty athletic, but he's willing to stand in the pocket and trade, take one to give one. I don't like to see that. And on top of that, he's never been audited when it comes to the grappling, James. We have never seen what this guy looks like dealing with a takedown or if he has any type of a get-up game whatsoever. As much as I do not like Mohammed Usman, and I think he's very limited, this might be a fight that he's capable of winning. If Mohammed Usman comes in here and decides to wrestle, that could just be wraps. Like that could straight up be the end of this fight. Now, if they both come in here and decide to bang, obviously it's a puncher's chance. Anybody can go ahead and take this thing down. I don't like it. I don't like this fight one bit, James. I'm going to sit out on the sidelines and I'm going to watch, but I have it on good authority for some very sharp people who I trust betting very, very much. that Mohammed Usman is the side. And we saw what appears to be some market manipulation here on this one. Now, contrary to, my report there on the Gomis side, again, apologies everybody for that. This line did a full U-turn. It opened up near pick'em. Tafa got all the way up to being like a minus 240, minus 250 favorite, something like that. And then it was a landslide of money on Usman as a big underdog. I think he got up to plus 180 at some point, and we're back down to a pick'em. That kind of U-shaped movement is usually an early bet on one side to get the line to move. They wait for the limits to open up a little bit, and then they hammer the side they really want at a better number. And that kind of seems to be what's happened in this spot. And that tells me that that's the right side. I haven't bet it yet. I'm not sure I'm going to. My personal read is I can't stand the game of Mohammed Usman one bit. He's an old 34 years old, just getting his MMA career started. But that's the side I'm going to pick. I'm going to say Usman gets the win here and shows Junior Tafa how to wrestle on Saturday. But I have zero confidence in that pick, James. What do you think?
We're on the same page here. And listen, I'm assuming at some point we will disagree on some fights, but I feel the exact same way. And I'm pretty sure we're going to agree on the same fight, which really opened my eyes to how the skill set of Mohammed Usman. It was that PFL fight against Brandon Sales. I could not believe that Brandon Sales, of all people, is dominating Mohammed Usman in this fight and finished him. And my first thought was, this guy's too small for heavyweight. So he's fighting a heavyweight still. And granted, he's fighting a guy that's about his size as well, right? We're talking 6'2" to 6'3", not like super big for that division. But yeah, I was not that impressed from that fight. And even the fight against Zach Pagua in the finale, he was losing that fight, I thought. And then he came out of nowhere and knocked Zach out. And it was just a really sort of weird finish here. I don't know if he's going to be able to do that here. This might be a fight where I do take the under here. If you get like 1.5 minus 2.5, there could be a finish here. Both these guys can throw. Tafa is also a kickboxer. By the way, quick Wikipedia does determine that I believe Justin Tafa is his brother. So that would
Perfect.
make sense because they do kind of look alike.
I heard they weren't brothers, and I'm looking at them. I'm like, they got the same face.
Yeah, I know. Well, and that's why people got confused about is it Junior or Justin fighting in this fight. Anyways, I think Junior's going to knock him out. I just have not been that impressed with Usman. I know where you're coming from. Like, he does have that path to victory with the wrestling. I just don't think he does it. I think he's trying to replicate what he did in the last fight, and that's, go for the finish. And it is concerning that Tafa's only got 4 fights, but that's why maybe you take the under just in case, Mohammed Usman's the one who knocks him out. But yeah, there's no way I can bet Mohammed Usman after that. I know there was a couple fights ago, but that was so fresh in my head. There's no way, like, after watching that fight, I'm like that. Because you remember Usman, he was a free agent. He had options. He went to PFL because he thought he was going to win $1 million. And then he didn't even get out of the first fight. And he was out, right? So that to me is like, and he's 34. It's not like you said, he has time to kind of figure things out. This is what you see is what you get. So yeah, I'm going Justin Tafa by knockout.
Absolutely. And, once in a while,
Junior Tafa.
You get these fighters that are here because of their training partner, because of their sibling, because of their brother, who they're attached to. Like, that just feels so like Usman here in this spot to me. But hey, a 4-0 guy that's never put on a wrestling singlet before, that might be a guy you can get by. We'll find out. We'll find out here on Saturday. All right. We are moving right along, everybody. Next up, we've got Karol taking on Norma Dumont in another spectacular women's MMA fight. The slight favorite, Norma Dumont, at the minus 115 mark here. I've had kind of a sketchy back and forth relationship with both of these women here, James. Karol is somebody who I've been very, very excited about. 16-4. I like her pace. I like her pressure. She has a high volume, generally speaking. She's very, very thick, well-muscled, but she's going to be the smaller of the two here, ever so slightly, if the numbers are to be believed. Norma Dumont is a monster. She's 4-2 in the UFC, but she is a tank from the waist down. I mean, she has a massive lower body. Kind of reminds me of a female version of Devin Clark, where they've got all that explosivity and power. But the problem for me with Norma Dumont is she starts so slow, and she has maybe some of the worst IQ we have ever seen. I had a Dumont inside the distance bet against Wolf when she welcomed her to the UFC, and she had her practically unconscious twice and never bothered to follow up when she knocked her to the ground to, get it in the grappling realm where you could very easily submit somebody who just is not well adversed on the mat. Instead, welcomed her back up to the feet and grinded her way to a decision instead. Like, I just cannot get my head around Norma Dumont ever. Karol, I know, is at least going to come forward and go for it. She's going to swing for the fences. And honestly, you look at her line history, she's never been less than a -190 favorite. She's been massively favored in almost every single one of her UFC fights so far. So this is by far the lowest price tag you'll get on her. Now, obviously, I know that's for a reason. She's going to be the smaller fighter here. But in this day and age, I do think the judges are going to favor, even if it's not overly damaging, the slightly more activity when it comes to the strikes of Karol Rosa over the clinch and cage control grappling of Norma Dumont. I'm going to pick Karol Rosa to go ahead and get the slight upset here, James. But honestly, I'm looking at a split decision. When DraftKings, I know the show is brought to you by Superbook Sports, but if you like those crazy numbers and fun little prop bets, DraftKings has the split decision prop, and this fight has split decision written all over it. Clinching, hugging up against the cage, one girl getting takedowns, one girl landing 10 extra significant strikes. I think I play the split decision prop on this one, and don't worry about who wins it, James. What do you think?
Yeah, that's exactly my call too. Fight goes the distance. You could even do like you said, split decision. Two really inconsistent fighters here. You know, Karol Rosa, I was big on her as well. And then what was it? Sarah McMahon, I think, was the fight a couple of fights ago. It's like, how do you lose that? Like, you had all this momentum, and I know Sarah's still a very good fighter. She's obviously over in Bellator now, but that was one where I kind of pumped the brakes on her a little bit because she looked good outside of that. Lena Landsberg, majority decision, probably would have liked a bit more of a dominant win there. But yeah, and then Norma Dumont, like, you're right. How did she not finish Danielle Wolf in that last fight? I'm sitting there being like, Danielle Wolf's like, again, had like one fight, I think it was on Contender Series, and then got in the UFC. It was just very bizarre. But yeah, I'm going to go Karol Rosa, but I think the only play I'll do, like I said, is the fight goes the distance. That's it. I'm going to stay far away from both these fighters because, again, very inconsistent, both of them.
Agreed. I think this is the way, James. I really do. This is not going to be a fight where, I mean, I don't want to say never, because you do have those people out there that are super sharp and super snipey, and they can find a spot where they've identified a hole in somebody's game that the other fighter can take advantage of. For me, that ain't this fight. I'm not able to identify that difference here. And unless I am mistaken, I believe Karol Rosa is going up to 145 here for this fight. So, like I mentioned, slightly undersized, that could definitely play a factor. She does have a solid takedown defense from what we've seen, but that's at 135, and Dumont is big and very, very strong. So lean to Karol Rosa for me. Split decision, if anything else, mostly just sitting back and letting this one go ahead and roll on by me.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, everybody, we've got Rani Yahya taking on Montel Jackson. And I can't, James. I just can't. I have tried to pronounce Rani Yahya dead like 4 or 5 different times. The guy just never quits. I don't know how, but he just manages to keep on rolling and skates by and does his dang thing. He's turning into one of these ageless Brazilian wonders. 38 years old. He is coming off of a nearly 2-year layoff here. The UFC was trying to match him up with Cody Garbrandt. Obviously, I think trying to get Cody another highlight reel KO, something along those lines. But he's a BJJ specialist. He's got really strong wrestling. He does have a questionable gas tank on him, but he always seems to be able to push through. You know, he seems to redline and slow down and then just finds that second gear and manages to get it done. He's one of these guys that walks forward, wings bombs, and doesn't care if he lands or if you land, because as long as the fight gets to the ground, that's all he cares about. He'll sweep from his back if he needs to, but if he can knock you down and get on top, it's that much better. Now, Montel Jackson, 12-2. He's big and tall for this weight class. He's freakishly athletic. He's got a super strong body lock, tall and lanky, nice long jab. Very measured in his last fight against Julio Arce. Really impressed me. 63% overall striking defense. Montel Jackson, he's hard to hit if he doesn't want you to touch him. Big improvements in his striking, slick countering, and he's got a strong right hand. He's also a solid wrestler. He averages 3.54 takedowns per 15 minutes, landing at a 71% accuracy. Now, Jackson's only got a 67% takedown defense himself, so Ronnie could get the grappling going in theory here in this spot. I think this is a violence type of fight, James, and I do think I can pronounce Rani Yahya dead just one more time. I think Montel Jackson's going to knock him out. With the height and reach disparity, I kind of think Ronnie's going to have a hard time closing that gap, and he's finally going to land on the button. Rani Yahya has been knocked out twice before in his career, and he's getting older. He's not getting any younger. I kind of think this is finally it. But at -600, I'm not betting Montel Jackson. I'll hope the KO prop is somewhere near even money and maybe play that.
Yeah, that's what I'm interested how this plays out. I think we're all on the Montel Jackson side. I mean, if you look at, the odds, obviously it sort of favors him that way, and the height and reach. The thing is, though, Montel typically goes the distance, right? If you look a lot of his fights now, Jesse Strader, that's, that was a finish there. What was the other finish he had? He had a finish on Brian Kelleher as well, but he submitted him in that fight. And he's not going to be able to do that to Yahya. He's got a great ground game, obviously. Might be able to finish him, but you know what I'm looking at here? And again, might be crazy here. The over 2.5 is plus money. If like, I don't see Jackson, maybe he does, maybe he gets like a first round finish. It's just, that's not really typical of him. Like even someone like JP Blaydes, which I think was a fight that was very much favored in his end, that also went the distance. So I kind of feel like we might see Montel, and especially, we haven't seen a ton of him lately. When was his last fight? It was in November. I could see him maybe just cruising along, picking his shots and getting a decision here, because Yahya is dangerous. He's got a lot more experience, a lot more fights. You have to go all the way back to 2009, the last time Yahya was knocked out in a fight, and that was against Joseph Benavidez. So I think, I know Jackson is capable of doing it. I don't know if we'll see that in this particular fight here. So I'm going to go Montel Jackson by decision, kind of, spice things up a little bit here.
Okay. I don't mind it one bit, James. This is definitely a spot where you can get a little crazy like that. I mean, Montel Jackson, you're absolutely right. The JP Blaydes fight, he had him rocked badly. I want to say 3 different times in that fight, and never really just pulled the trigger on that killer instinct to follow up and get it done. JP Blaydes did get that opportunity to flash and actually mount Montel Jackson at that one point where I thought he was going to pull the absolute insane upset in that spot. I wonder if the grappling prowess of Jackson maybe not Jackson, but JP Blaydes kind of kept him a little hesitant there in that spot. Now, Rani is obviously just as dangerous, but I feel like maybe with him being 38 years old, Montel might feel a little bit more comfortable going for it in that type of a spot, especially with how Rani can kind of slow down. If he starts dragging on the feet, if he starts showing that wear and tear, I think that's when Montel Jackson can maybe open up a little bit. I don't think it's going to be a first round finish, but I wouldn't mind it if it was a second or a third after he kind of felt completely safe and secure and solid in the fight, and then opened up as Rani faded. I'm probably going to lose money on Montel Jackson again if I pull that trigger, because I just can't seem to pick this guy's method of victory correct, and he's always priced massively. So be warned, folks. This is one that I do not have a good read on. And again, I have not bet this fight. Last week, James, I felt extremely confident in a couple of spots. I came in and I had already pulled several triggers, and I had several more that I was staring at, looking at, betting and getting behind. This isn't that weak to me. Like, I think these are very close competitive fights. You've got a lot of either young and or untrustworthy fighters here in these spots. And because of that, I know last week I said, I might keep it low volume, and then I ended up betting 20 different things. I'm probably just going to have a very small handful of bets and keep it very, very tight this week, because I don't like this card very much from a betting perspective.
Yeah, no, it's a really tricky card. You got to be careful in certain spots. And like you mentioned, like with even that last fight, like it's very, anytime someone's like over like minus 400, you think it's probably going to be a finish because they're so heavily favored, but sometimes it doesn't happen. So that's where, you just have to, you got to kind of, just see the, the style matchup and everything. And like I can see Jackson getting the finish potentially, but I also have seen that guy go the distance so many times. It's just a little bit concerning. That's all.
Absolutely. Completely agree. All right, everybody. We are just over halfway through the card here. We got 144 live viewers. Thank you all again for joining us. Real quickly here, let me pay some bills. We're going to hear a word from our sponsors. First up, we've got none other than your home here, Pub Sports Radio. We do weekly free contests here on pubsportsradio.com. Of course, you can find all the merch and things like that here. But we've got a winner from just last week, Son of Gun, with 750 points. They put a free $100 up for whoever wins this thing. All you got to do is beat the Pub Sports Radio personalities, myself included, to win that $100 cash prize. Next up, Spectation Sports. And this is what we were talking about a little bit earlier. They do regional scene MMA, and you can watch all the shows here. Aries FC is coming up this weekend. The return of Luis Pena. He is taking on a PFL veteran there in that fight. So you're going to have a really good event here on April 22nd to look forward to. Promo code Die Hard if you want 25% off your initial sign up for a subscription. Catch up on all the regional scene MMA out there with betting options. Next up, No House Advantage. If you guys like Prize Picks, it's just another alternative to that for you. You can check out No House Advantage. Promo code Die Hard gets you a 100% bonus, initial bonus at least, up to $100. So they'll double that $100 initial deposit there for you. And they do have some solid MMA betting lines. Last but not least, Sharp app. These guys are putting out awesome content, awesome tools to help with your betting, and the Discord is absolutely on fire. The pros and the coaches in here are professional gamblers, and they do put out their pros picks for people to follow. So make sure you check out the Sharp app, and especially make sure you jump in the Sharp app Discord. There we go. We made it. We survived. Thank you all so much for hanging with me there through that. Next fight we want to talk to you about is Ricky Glenn coming back here against Christos Giagos. And I'll be honest with you, James, I completely forgot about Christos Giagos.
Yeah.
This guy
hasn't fought in a while. Yeah.
He has not fought in some time, and I straight up forgot he was on the roster. 19-10, 33 years old, 4-4 in the UFC. And I'm just going to run real quick. Now, it's not always this simple, but I'm going to run real quick through his wins and his losses. He's lost to the best of the best. Charles Oliveira, Drakkar Klose, Arman Tsarukyan, Thiago Moises. Seems like he really struggles with that jump up in competition. However, I'm not really sure where he belongs in the division either, because the people he's managed to beat are all cut. Sean Soriano, Carlton Minus, Damir Hadzovic, Mizuta Hirota. Like, we have no idea where this guy truly belongs here in this weight class, because he could be somewhere in the mid to bottom range. He also could just not be UFC caliber at all. I'm not really sure, James. And when you go back and watch like the Sean Soriano fight, he did the Kevin Lee stanky leg in that fight. I'm worried about this guy's chin. I do not think Christos Giagos is very durable here in this spot. He's very stiff and robotic on his feet, but he's very physically strong. As you can tell by the guy's body, he has some serious muscle on him. Good, solid wrestling. He's got good timing on his counter strikes, but he's there to be hit. I don't personally like Christos Giagos, and I've got a feeling this might be his opportunity to walk. The UFC might release him after this one, but he's taking on Ricky Glenn, 34 years old, not a spring chicken himself, 22-6 with 2 draws on his record. You know, he hasn't fought since October of 2021. He fought to that draw with Grant Dawson that really caught everybody off guard. I had a parlay that got saved by Ricky Glenn that night because he managed to come back and force a draw there where Grant Dawson had just nothing left to give in that third round. He showcased great balance, great refusal to die in a fight, did not commit to just, accepting defeat when he only had 4 minutes left on the clock to go ahead and get a win. Rolled with the takedown, swept, reversed. I think that's all stuff that he can do here against Christos Giagos, if I'm being completely honest. But his overall skill set at this stage of his career is a bit unknown. I mean, we haven't seen him fight a lot recently at all. And then most of his fight against Grant Dawson took place with him in the defensive and then ground and pound. I mean, I can look good on a heavy bag ground and pounding, James. Like, it's not that hard to throw elbows from top position. So I'm not really sure what exactly Rick Glenn brings to the table here in this fight. I'm going to lean with him getting the victory here. I think the chin of Giagos is going to be the problem. I'm going to say Glenn by knockout. But again, I don't have any real technical analysis for you guys to go ahead and back that read up. I don't know the shot that he's going to land. I don't know how it's going to happen. Maybe it's another spot where he's got to survive some sketchy grappling situations and then come back in the second or the third round to finally flip the tables and take over. I'm not entirely certain. I'm going to pick Ricky Glenn, but again, I'm not betting it. And dear God, at minus 200, please don't parlay that guy. James, what do you like on this one?
Yeah, I pretty much agree. And it's funny, the way you were describing Christos Giagos, you could almost describe that for Ricky Glenn as well, in the sense that, some of his wins have not exactly aged well. And just, he's losing to pretty good guys like, well, Kevin Aguilar, maybe not so much. Miles Jury at the time was 16-2. Lance Palmer lost to him in World Series of Fighting way back in the day, but just not that active. And going to a draw with Grant Dawson, I mean, that granted, I think people forget, no pun intended, granted there, that was the fight that Grant decided, I'm going to go to American Top Team. Remember, he left right after that. He was like, okay, I got to switch things up. And Grant has looked better since then. So that's been a good move for him. But I think that's really the only evidence we have between these two fighters of like someone competing like well. Like, I think Grant's a very good fighter. And the fact that, Glenn took him to a draw, I think is actually like a positive for him. But he hasn't fought since October of 2021. That's how long ago that fight was. It's a long time ago. And then add in the fact that Giagos has also not fought since June of last year. So both have long layoffs. I did interview Christos ahead of this fight, in terms of like why he's been off for so long. Part of it was injuries. Part of it was also just getting settled in with the team. He moved to Florida. He used to train in California, right? And then moved to Florida. His wife got a job over there, and then he ended up, training over at Kill Clip. But says it's taken him a bit for him to kind of get accustomed with the team. He's got that figured out now, and we'll see if it pays off. But you're right, and not only, I think people forget as well, This is Christos Giagos' second stint in the UFC. He had a stint with them way back a few years before, got cut, and then got back in. So this is it. If he loses this, he's never going to fight in the UFC again. I don't think. They'll probably cut him. So a lot on the line here for Giagos, but I think Ricky Glenn's just a little bit better, and I think he gets it done. But like you, no bet. I'm staying away from this one.
Okay. And I think that's wise in this spot, because these guys could be a lot closer in skills than the line would tend to suggest, I feel like. So It wouldn't surprise me one bit if Giagos was able to hang on for that third round where Dawson wasn't and grind his way to a decision victory. It's totally possible here in this spot. So we will see. Next up, everybody, we've got Jeremiah Wells, the man who's got my absolute favorite scream face here in the UFC, taking on Matt Semi, the Jedi Semelsberger, another dude that it just is so hard to wrap your brain around. Like, so Semi the Jedi, he's 30 years old, and the up and down so far of his career has been absolutely insane, James. Let me just go ahead and, run back on this here for people real quick here. So I did go ahead and bet him. I'm sorry. I bet on Chaos Williams. I got the win there on that one, but that fight was way hairier than I thought it was going to be. I thought Chaos would knock him out. That didn't happen. The AJ Fletcher fight, I thought he was going to cruise because of some of the grappling deficiencies we've seen. Nope. I'm sorry. I thought he was going to get grinded out. I thought AJ was going to take him out there. Nope. He got the win in that spot. So, okay. He gets by AJ Fletcher, but he probably shouldn't have. So I back Alex Morono I back him against Alex Morono. I'm getting all tangled up here. I'm sorry. I've basically zigged when I should have zagged, James. I'll just shorten it so I don't ruin everybody's ears and good time. I have zigged when I should have zagged every single time on Matt Semelsberger, except his last fight where I went, you know what? This spot just screams Jake Matthews. Everybody and their mother with Jake coming off that big upset knockout is going to want Jake Matthews, and the line was fishy. And I went, you know what? I'm not touching it. And sure enough, Semelsberger does what he does, and he comes out and pulls off the goofiest upset of all time and gets a win over Jake Matthews when Jake Matthews' stock could not be higher. I don't know what to make of Semelsberger. He's long. He knows how to strike. He's got decent, solid power on him. He showed off a good chin. He showed off some serious heart staying alive, especially in that Morono fight and just refusing to go away, even though he was gassed and beaten and bloodied in that spot. I could see him taking the technical approach here and kind of playing the matador with Jeremiah Wells. Wells is 36 years old. He is 3-0 in the UFC. All three are finishes. 2 of those in the first round. Extremely high-level BJJ. You do not want to be anywhere near under this guy. If he gets you on the ground, you're in serious trouble. But I do think that if someone can survive that nuke of his, I think someone will be able to drag him deeper into a fight and maybe outpoint him or see what his gas tank looks like. No one's been able to do that yet. I think Semi the Jedi might be the guy to do that. Every time I've bet against Jeremiah Wells, which, in fairness, it's only been once, hasn't gone well, James. I really thought Court McGee was the guy that was going to be durable enough to take the shot and then keep on pressing. The difference is Court McGee only has one direction, and that's forward. So he was always going to, run into something. Whereas I think Matt Semelsberger can play the outside. I think the lateral movement, the footwork, I think he can use his length, his long jab. It's a bit of a different stylistic matchup in that way. But I do worry about the takedowns. I worry about him getting grounded by Wells. So again, this is a spot where I'm going to lean ever so slightly with Matt Semelsberger. I'm not convicted enough to put my money in that spot. Jeremiah Wells is obviously extremely dangerous. I'm going to pick Semelsberger to get the win. But that's where it ends for me. No bet here, James. What do you think? What are you doing?
I'm on the other side. I like Jeremiah Wells here. And I did interview both fighters ahead of this one. Jeremiah Wells, last fight on his contract. So really looking to go out there and obviously make a statement here and not last fight on his contract, sign a new contract. I was thinking of some other fighter, but he's Jeremiah Wells is, obviously been on quite the roll lately, really looking to sort of, push the pace and everything. And really good camp by the sounds of it. One of his main weapons, Sean Brady, not able to use him, obviously, because Sean's still injured. Hurt his groin, right? He was supposed to fight Michelle Pereira last month, so won't have him. But, you got all types of guys in there. There's also a number of fighters who go down there to do some cross-training, Neil Magny being one of them, Randy Brown. They have a number of guys coming in and out of there, so that's very encouraging. Now, on the flip side with Semelsberger, he talked about, just having the luxury of, living in Maryland and being able to go do a bunch of different gyms. He's kind of customized this camp the way he wants. He was very secretive about who he was working with, which I found kind of interesting. But he's also very honest. He's like, look, man, this is a scary fight. I know how good Jeremiah Wells is. There's a lot of familiarity there between the two. They both fought for CFFC. I think they were like supposed to fight years ago, so they know each other very well. But just if you hear Matt talk in that interview, he knows how good Jeremiah Wells is. Like, there's no underestimating whatsoever in this fight. And I just think though, he's got that little bit of that it factor. You know, you see him finish guys like, you know, I know McGee's like, again, getting up there in age, but that was still a good win. Like, you know, him going out there and taking care of business. With Semelsberger, he can beat the guys he's supposed to. Your Jason Witts, your Martin Santos, those guys. But, you know, when he fights like a Chaos Williams and he's fighting a guy that's a little bit better in the striking department, that tends to not go his way. And I think that's what's going to happen here. I don't know if Wells is going to finish Semelsberger. You have to go all the way back to, you know, a couple of years ago, the last time Semelsberger was finished, and it was a 3rd round finish as well. I think Wells might end up landing the better shots and earning a decision that way. I know that seems a little bit odd, and I know I picked a lot of decisions on this card, but I just think Semelsberger has shown his durability, and I could see this being one of those fights that, you know, potentially fight of the night, but with Wells just landing some better shots and just winning some points on the scorecard. So I'm going Jeremiah Wells by decision, but I think it'll be a clear 30-27 or 29-28 for him in this one.
Okay. So we are picking different fighters here, but we are agreeing on the over, maybe potentially being involved here. I'll be curious to see where they drop that line there for this fight. Hopefully, it'd be nice if they gave us a 1.5 with the way Wells has been fighting recently. I would love a short price tag on an over 1.5 if we could get it. Next up, everybody, we are talking about Iasmin Lucindo taking on Brogan Walker, and I cannot wait to see Iasmin Lucindo back in the cage. James, she's 21 years old, already 13-5 at just 21 years of age. And her fight against Yasmin Haregi, they were up on the main card, and everyone was going, who are these two debuting UFC women who are getting a spot on the main card? And they took that fight home. Like, nobody was complaining about that fight being on the main card after they got going, because they had an absolute banger that night. And we've just been licking our chops to see Lucindo back in the cage. Now, Haregi did go ahead and get the win, but Iasmin Lucindo showed that she belonged in that fight. She's very light on her feet. She steps in, plants hard, and throws fastballs when she wants to. Lots of feints. She reads her opponents very well when it comes to her striking defense. She does a good job of avoiding damage. She does unload in the pocket. She's got a strong body kick. She likes that spinning back kick every once in a while. And she's got a hell of a chin on her. You know, Haregi hit her with some big shots, and she was able to hang in there, keep coming. Never was a problem for her. She just got promoted to BJJ purple belt, James, which you love to see, because she does have 3 submission losses on her record. That seems to be kind of the way she got caught early on in her career. I say early on, she's still very early on for being only 21 years old. Brogan Walker, though, 7-3. She was the runner-up on the Ultimate Fighter this last season. She's a grappling specialist. She's a BJJ black belt. She likes to stand and throw wild hooks at range. She throws from the hip, though. It seems like she leaves herself completely open and hittable from that spot. You know, in her last fight, though, a lot of people, myself included, thought Brogan Walker was going to be the winner of that Ultimate Fighter Series, James, and she got taken out by Juliana Miller. I said from the jump that I thought Miller was basically a size bully and not particularly skilled, and that's why I bet Brogan Walker the night that they fought. You saw in Miller's last fight that that's exactly what she is. Veronica Hardy was able to go ahead and do what I thought Brogan Walker was going to be able to do, but that puts some doubt in my mind about just how good is Brogan Walker. Because if I don't think much of Miller and she gets dragged around the cage for 15 minutes and eventually finished by this girl who I simply don't think is UFC caliber, that raises the question of what's she doing here. She kind of feels like, and no disrespect, you guys know, I'm a gambler, I'm a handicapper, I give you my honest, open opinions on everything, so this is just my opinion. I respect every single fighter that has the guts to step into that cage and put it all on the line like they do. But I think Brogan Walker's an Ultimate Fighter throwaway, James. I think she's going to have a couple of fights in the UFC, and then she's going to get cut, and she's just not going to be here all that long. I think this is a showcase spot for Iasmin Lucindo, and because of what I saw with those striking exchanges, I think Lucindo's going to knock her head off. I think we might get a round 1 finish here from Iasmin Lucindo. I know she's a huge favorite. I think she's a justifiable parlay piece, and I'm going to be looking for that inside the distance and knockout prop when I get a chance to. If anybody's going to win by submission, it's probably Walker, unless it's a club and sub, so I lean knockout over sub, but I think Lucindo's definitely the side here. What do you make of this fight, James?
Yeah, I'm going the same sides here. Was not that like, yeah, talk about a loss aging badly. Juliana Miller. I mean, that, looking back now, that didn't help Brogan Walker's case whatsoever. The other thing you got to look at is she's got 2 other losses. One's to Erin Blanchfield back in 2020, which Erin's amazing. She also lost to Pearl Gonzalez. That's one you think maybe could have got it done. And Brogan also has a win over Miranda Maverick, which has aged quite well, just looking at her career. But Lucindo, despite the losing effort, was impressed by her. She's, again, if UFC has their choice, what do you think? They want a 21-year-old from Brazil to win, or they want a 33-year-old fighter who, lost a few in Invicta and didn't end up winning the Ultimate Fighter? I'm with you. It's a throwaway. I'm going to go with the Brazilian to get it done on Saturday. But yeah, it's, again, a fight I don't have a great read on, if I'm being honest, because I just was not that impressed with Brogan. But then, she does have more experience in terms of like law position than her opponent. So it's tough to say.
Yep. It's a bit of a tough spot. It really is, but I'm, of all the spots on the card, that one really jumped out at me. And I did see the opportunity there for Lucindo to land one of those big haymakers. She's got such a big advantage here on the feet. And I think she is competent enough at this point in her career to at least survive on the ground. We'll see what happens, though. I'm not sure any bet on this particular card is a home run. I don't use the term lock for a very good reason. I don't think there are locks in MMA. Like, nothing is 100% in this stupid sport. We've seen what happens to these guys, random freak injuries. A toe gets broken from getting caught in the cage. Your ACL blows in the middle of a fight that you're winning. Like, it just shit happens in MMA. So there's no such thing as a lock. I would never call Lucindo a lock, but I think she's probably the fighter I like most to get the win on this entire card.
Okay. Fair enough. By the way, I just quickly, sorry to again be bad guest etiquette. I messed up. So I did have it right the first time. Jeremiah Wells, it is the last fight on his contract. So keep that in mind. Matt Semelsberger signed a new contract. That's why I got mixed up, because I interviewed both of them. So Semelsberger re-upped with UFC. So they're happy with him. He's coming off the win over Jake Matthews. Jeremiah Wells, this is it. He's got to go out there and hopefully get another contract here. But he's 36. So we'll see what the sort of the wiggle room is there with UFC. Just wanted to point that out and correct myself there.
Perfect. Betting on himself. You love to see it. Mm-hmm. All right. Next up, we're talking Bobby Green taking on Jared Gordon, the Flash himself, making his glorious return after that fight where he arguably got robbed by Patty the Baddie Pimblett. And I went back and I rewatched that fight, James, and I hate to say it, but it was way closer than a lot of people want to admit. Upon rewatch, I think it could have been 29-28 either direction. And Jared Gordon was a massive underdog in that spot. And I know a lot of people bet on Jared Gordon that night. So I do think that, we all do it. We've all got the blinders on. When we have a bet, we want to cheer for our bet to win. And that sways the way you look at a fight. But I honestly think that 29-28 either direction, especially with what we've seen in MMA recently, where the judging is favoring the bigger shots, I think you could make an argument for Patty having won that fight. Now, don't skewer me, everybody. I do still think Jared Gordon deserved to get his hand raised that night, but it was closer than I recall it being, is all I'm saying. It was a tough decision, and he's a grinder, man. That's kind of Jared Gordon's thing. He's never been the most athletic guy. He doesn't hit the hardest. He makes up for it with heart and grit and work. He does good, solid boxing work. He uses his hands to set up his takedowns well. He's got a good, solid takedown on him. He is tough when he gets on top of you, man. If he gets top control, that's where Jared Gordon can just kind of grind on you and work you for 15 minutes. We saw what he can do up against the cage as well. He can push you up there and slow down. He does average 2.07 takedowns per 15 minutes with a 40% accuracy, which is pretty solid. Now, his opponent here, Bobby King Green, 29, 14, and 1. He kind of has that machismo thing where he just wants to beat you wherever you think you're best at. And that's gotten him into some trouble in some of his fights because he's let decisions slip away by trying to beat the grappler in a wrestling match and things of that nature. And sometimes he showboats a little too much. So, it looks like his opponents are landing and scoring on him. Even though he's out there having a good time and not getting hurt, the judges are still counting those punches as landing. So it becomes a problem for him and it makes him really tough to bet on, especially as a big favorite like in this spot. He's 2-4 in his last 6, and he's getting up there. He's been around for quite some time, so you got to wonder, when does that cliff eventually come for Bobby Green? His last 2 losses actually were by finish, and the Drew Dober one, James, he was winning that fight. And I mean, like, clearly winning that fight. Drew Dober is a guy who's hovering right around that contender level here in this weight class. And I think Bobby Green was up 2 rounds on him easily before he just rolled the wrong way with the wrong punch. And we know that Dober has the kind of power that can flip a fight at any point in time. And he just landed on the button. That happens in mixed martial arts. You know, if you run that fight back, Bobby Green is obviously the more technical and more skilled fighter. I think this fight matches up very, very similarly for him, except that Jared Gordon doesn't have the power to make him pay. I think Bobby Green should coast in this spot as long as he's not ready to phone it in. As long as he's not just done now that he knows he's not going to be a contender and is just showing up for a paycheck. If we get your classic Bobby Green in this spot, he's got a 3-inch reach advantage. He's got a 72% takedown defense rating. This guy is almost impossible to control, even if you do get him onto the ground. That's something that people, I don't think, credit him enough for, is his ability to get up. And he's just got the fastest, most accurate hands. And I don't think Gordon will be able to get his respect with the punches. I think Bobby Green all day here, even though it's a bit of a high price tag here on him, I think Bobby Green is the side, and I wouldn't mind parlaying him up here, James. What do you make of this fight?
Death, taxes, and Bobby Green by decision. Minus the I quit to fight, right? But Bobby Green always wins a decision, usually. And I'm with you. That Drew Dober fight, he looked good. Bobby Green's these guys that always up there. He doesn't really like it. I mean, I know he did get finished in the last fight, but that's not typical for him. He's a guy that can, still, like, remember the Fiziev fight? He looked good in that 3rd round against Fiziev, and Fiziev's a really tough top contender. The problem is that Jared Gordon, he's got some good wins, but a lot of these guys are not. I mean, it's probably his best win recently is Joe Selecki. But outside of that, Danny Chavez, fight he missed weight, he got the win there. Chavez not in the UFC, Chris Fishgold not in the UFC, and those were at featherweight. Had the win over Leo Santos, is not in the UFC. Lost to Pimblett. I think people thought that he won, but kind of what I'm getting at here is, like, Jared Gordon's a good fighter, but I think with Bobby Green, he's a great fighter. And I think that Bobby Green is very durable. And I just think that Gordon's, like you said, like, Dober has power, Jared Gordon does not. So how does Jared win this fight? He's not going to out wrestle him. He's not going to submit him, I don't think. And if it stays standing, I think Bobby's the better striker. Bobby Green by decision. Get that juice down a little bit. Again, we're going a little heavy on decisions here today, but I just think, like, yeah, that's probably how he's going to win this fight. I would be, you were talking about, like, confident picks. Bobby Green's got to be one of my most confident picks on this card. I like Jared a lot. It's got nothing to do with Jared as the fighter, person, anything like that. I just think Bobby Green's one of those guys that a lot of the lightweights in that division are going to have a hard time beating. And I don't think Jared is going to have enough to get it done. So Bobby Green decision, getting it done.
Okay. Bobby Green by decision. And honestly, James, I might drag it out even one step further. I want to listen to the interviews. I want to see where Bobby's head's at. But if he's coming to, like, prove a point, if Bobby's got a chip on his shoulder coming into this one, I could see him getting the knockout. Jared Gordon has had some chin concerns with the higher caliber fighters. He's got 4 losses by knockout. And I thought Dawson was going to be able to keep the pace with Gordon and then eventually find a knockout. We know Dawson's gas tank is not that great these days. So obviously that one doesn't go our way. And I thought Patty the Batty was going to be able to hit hard enough to go ahead and get Gordon out of there, but he was too busy getting pinned up against the cage and being put on his back to land that shot. The other people that you look at that Gordon's fought, Selecki, Grappler, Chavez. I mean, you could say power striker, I guess, but not that great. Not UFC caliber, cut. Chris Fishgold, same thing. Grappler, cut. Like, he hasn't fought anybody who can really pop in some time. If Bobby Green comes out with a chip on his shoulder, I think he finishes Jared Gordon. And again, I know he plays too much, so that's a risky proposition, but I'm going to look at a number. I want to see what they drop for me on Bobby Green by KO. That might be my hot take for the week.
Yeah. No, I like it. I like it, man.
We're all in on Team Bobby Green over here. All right, everybody. We got 161 live viewers. Do us a favor. Hit the like button. I am joined by my guy, James Lynch. Give him a follow at Lynch on Sports, the best interviewer in the game. Make sure you support our guy so we keep getting all those wonderful little tidbits about our favorite fighters. Next up, we've got Brad Tavares taking on Bruno Silva. And I just can't, James. I can't. Bruno Silva is a guy that I'm having such a tough time with because I was really high on him when he first made it over to the UFC. And I think it's a USADA thing because he's gotten skinnier ever since he came to the UFC. The Gerald Meerschaert fight, I thought he was going to knock Gerald's head off. Now, we saw in Gerald's last fight just how susceptible he is to that kind of thing happening. And I thought that's where, after the Alex Pereira fight, Bruno would get back on track against GM3. But then he shows up looking like withered old Vitor Belfort out there. He's sucked up. The muscles are gone. Like, what happened to my man? You got to wonder if it's just being in the UFC with USADA watching you for a year or two that maybe has done this to our guy. We're going to have to do some stalking on Bruno Silva, see how he shows up at the weigh-in, see how he looks at those face-offs. If he's swollen back up, maybe we can trust the power of Bruno Silva again. But if he's still looking a little scrawny, he might be full on fade at this point. You know, this guy's a ground and pound specialist, James. He's a BJJ black belt, but he never uses it. It's only like the wrestling in reverse kind of thing. He's super easy to take down, but he's got a good scramble ability. He's got a good get up game. He looks to reverse people, and rather than look for a choke or an arm, he just pounds your face through the canvas. He is a ground and pound specialist, and he has brutal soul crushing power, especially in that right hand. Now, you look at his opponent, and Brad Tavares is training at Extreme Couture, one of my favorite gyms out there these days, but he's 19-7, 35 years old. He's getting up there in age. You know, this guy is very technical, keeps a high pace. He likes to dig deep. He's got serious heart on him, but he also is kind of, at this point, he's getting to be a middle of the road UFC kind of fighter. He's a gatekeeper. He can't quite get over that hump. Lost a really tough fight to Dricus du Plessis in his last fight, where it looked like his nose was broken. It looked like his face was, you know, completely destroyed that night. Managed to survive that third round and keep on going. You know, you go back to the Omari Akhmedov fight before that. I played the round 3 on that one. Brad Tavares doesn't knock anybody out, but he's this close in round 3 on almost everybody because he's got such a damn good gas tank. He can just kind of outlast you and piece you up. Managed to get a split there on that one, though, somehow. Almost lost the Akhmedov fight. You just kind of wonder where he's at this point in his career. And I know that's a lot of speculation. On paper, he's the more skilled. He's the more technical. I do think he's going to have the advantage in that area on the feet. But I also worry about the damage accumulation. I worry about the age. I worry about all those points. If Bruno comes in with a new doctor, he might be able to find the knockout here on Brad Tavares. But that's really the only way I'd be looking, James. I want to see that he's got abs popping. I want to see veins sticking out the side of his neck. And if I don't get that, it's probably Brad Tavares by decision. How do you like this fight?
Pretty much the exact same way you do. Again, hate to bore the audience here, but I might throw a little bit on Bruno Silva by knockout. But if Dricus du Plessis wasn't able to do it, and granted, I don't think Dricus had the best performance in that fight. I don't know if Bruno's going to be able to do that too. But you just remember, like, we're not that far removed. And I know he had, you know, some time off, but like, remember Edmund Shabazian knocked out Brad Tavares in the first round, and I thought that this is it. This is the beginning of the end for you know, Brad Tavares. Then he goes up there and win two in a row against Carlos Jr. and Akhmedov. So I think on paper, Brad is the better fighter. It's just, you're not getting the Brad Tavares from like 2014. You're getting the 2023 version. And that is a version that has taken a lot of damage. It's had a long layoff. Like, he hasn't fought since July. That's when that Dricus du Plessis fight was. So it's been a bit. And yeah, I could see Bruno getting the finish, but this is another one where, again, I might lay Bruno by knockout and that's it. And just, you know, small play there, but I got to pick Tavares because I do think he's the better fighter. It's just, you know, how is this started? Is this part of the decline? Is it this fight? I don't think it will be, but we'll see.
Yeah, we will definitely find out here. He doesn't have the club and sub magic that GM3 does. That's what got Bruno deep in that fight, was the classic Gerald Meerschaert move there. So it'll be interesting to see how this one ends up going. He's on a 2-0 skid, or I'm sorry, an 0-2 skid, but he's the younger fighter here. Silva is actually. He's 33 to Brad Tavares' 35. So yeah, I don't know. I'm going to lean tentatively with Silva. We'll see, though. I want to see what these guys look like for sure. All right, everybody. Co-main event time. Song Yadong taking on Ricky Simón. Now we're getting to the good stuff. Very much classic with these in-betweener type of free cards. We got a lot of meh on the bottom, but the top is glorious. I love this fight so much, James. I've been riding both Ricky Simón and Song Yadong. I'm very excited about them both. You know, I slipped up with Song. I kind of forgot how young he was. I thought maybe we had seen his peak a couple of fights back, and boy, did he prove me wrong. I love this kid. He is super flexible, never stops fighting. You know, you look back at the Corey Sandhagen fight, that thing on the judges' scorecards was 2-2 going into that 5th round. I wish the cut wasn't there to rob us of that 5th round, because frankly, I think Song is a title challenger in waiting. I think this kid's ceiling is so high, and we're not even quite there yet. We haven't seen it, but he's struggling taking that next jump up. You know, he took a little step back against Kyler Phillips, worked his way back up the mountain, but I can't say that it's not his skills that was holding him back. It was the cut that got him there against Corey Sandhagen. He was in that fight, and I just feel so badly for him that the opportunity to win it got taken from him. The kid's explosive. He is fast. He is hard to hold down. I like everything I see from Song Yadong at this point in his career. Ricky Simón, I could say much of the same. You know, he's 20-3, and he's been on one hell of a run. You know, his last couple of fights, knocking out Rafael Assunção, showing off his new boxing, showing off his head movement, showing off his power. You know, this is a guy we thought was going to be like a grinding decisionator, and now he's killing people out there in the cage. He derailed Jack Shore, who that age, his win, it's gone rather impressively. Jack Shore looked fantastic up a weight class in his last fight. So that's going to be a good notch on his belt moving forward here too. Ricky Simón is a guy that I think is kind of the boogeyman in this weight class. His ability to wrestle and grapple and force people to the mat, keep them there, put them in dangerous positions. And now you add that he's worked on his striking to boot. He's going to be a tough out for anybody. But I can't get out of my head the Uriah Faber knockout. You know, Uriah Faber is Song Yadong's coach, James. And that's kind of the big thing that gets me here, that if Song Yadong can stuff one or two takedowns, or even if he does get taken down, if he can get back up, if he can keep this fight at the pace that he likes to fight at, and mind you, he just got done with what he looked to be in very good condition for a 5-round fight, back to a 3-round fight where he should be able to let loose a little bit earlier. I do think Song Yadong's got more power. I do think he's got a speed advantage. I think he can crack Ricky Simón in this spot. And whether he knocks him out or if he's able to just score the damaging shots that gets him the win, I actually think I'm calling the upset here. There's a lot of favorites that I think probably get the win on this card, James. I think this is your dog, and he's only a short one, you know, but plus 115 is nothing to write home about. But I think I like Song in this spot. What about you?
I'm going the other way. I like Ricky Simón here. I agree with you though. Like, I think, you know, Song has definitely shown some promise. I had that fight a little bit different with Sandhagen. I thought Song won the first round, but I had Sandhagen winning the rest of them. Although I'd have to go back and look, in terms of, scoring that fight. But,
it was the official cards. I looked at the official cards, not my read, but it was
okay, gotcha. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I felt like Sandhagen was on his way to winning, regardless of if, you know, I like I said, I gave Song the first round, and then outside of that, but kind of getting back to that, like I think Simon's really, he's found a groove, right? He had the Faber. Now the Faber thing was weird because I remember interviewing him after that and him kind of saying he got a bit starstruck that like, I think he had trained at Alpha Male like ages before. And like, there was some sort of like, kind of like George St. Pierre when he fought Matt Hughes the first time, he was kind of like, you know, this is like, it was like too big of a moment for him or something. So I kind of, you know, just put a kind of a mulligan on that one. And then Rob Font, I mean, Rob Font's a very good bantamweight and you know,
you just saw how good Rob Font is.
Exactly. And he hasn't lost since then. And in fact, you know, finishing Rafael Assunção, very good. Jack Shore, that fight, he just took over Jack Shore. That was another, we talked earlier about a prospect versus prospect fight. That was that in Jack Shore and Ricky Simón. And a lot of people are on the Jack Shore side. And Simón, he dominated him and finished him in that fight. That was a very, very, very big win. So we know they both have power. It's only 3 rounds. This really should be like a 5-round fight, in my opinion, just with what's at stake here as far as the, you know, the weight class and everything. You know, big win for the winner, obviously. I give a slight edge to Simón just because I've just been a little bit more impressed with him, I think. You know, the whole thing with Song Yadong prior to this was him winning these really, really close decisions, right? He had the win over Chito Vera that I think people forget about years ago, but that's one that probably should have gone the other way. It was a very close fight. But since then, you start to see him get finishes, right? He finished Julio Arce. He finished, who's the other one? Marlon Moraes, although everyone's finishing Moraes, including in PFL these days. But yeah, kind of what I'm getting at here is I just think Simon's been a little bit more impressive, but there's still that unknown with Song where it's like, you know, he's doing quite well. Long story short, Ricky Simón, I'll probably go the fight doesn't go the distance. I think we're going to see a finish here. Even though it's only 3 rounds, I do think we'll see a finish here, and I think it's going to be Ricky Simón doing it.
You know, and I'm kind of with you on that finish there, James. Surprisingly enough, you know, these lower weight classes, usually it's a decision machine type of spot. But with the way with the way Ricky has been being aggressive lately, with the way Ricky has been finishing people, I think he's got more finishing equity than we gave him credit for originally. And obviously, we know Song has absolute missiles in those hands. They're fast. He hits hard. He cracks. He's got 8 wins by knockout, and he's been knocked out. He's been finished. So there's absolutely the opportunity for both guys to finish. I don't mind the violence look. I think that might be a great call.
Yeah, we'll see.
That's good stuff. We will see. We're on opposite sides here for the co-main event, but we both like violence, folks. It is time for your main event of the evening, and I think everybody likes violence in this fight, James. Sergey Pavlovich taking on Curtis Razor Blaydes. What a fight. I mean, in an era where Jon Jones has reclaimed the title, and we don't know what the future of heavyweight's going to look like because, quite frankly, I think Jon Jones is going to dip out here in a fight or two. I don't think he's long for the division. These are two of the guys that are going to be on the short list for fighting for that unclaimed heavyweight belt when Jon eventually walks away. And what a fight. I mean, let me just go ahead and start by telling you guys, this feels like a trap to me. Some of the smartest people I know are on Pavlovich as an underdog. Some people I very much respect. And I'm like, why would they ever give you Sergey Pavlovich at this kind of underdog odds here in this spot? Curtis Razor Blaydes is maybe he's always the bridesmaid, never the bride, right? Like, he's fought Francis Ngannou a couple of times and come up short a couple times. Like, if Francis doesn't exist, Curtis Blaydes is the guy that Jon Jones would have to go through to get the belt, not Francis Ngannou before he left the organization. This guy is an absolute monster. And if it wasn't for what appears to have been, a fluky uppercut to Derek Lewis, this guy would have already gotten another opportunity at the heavyweight belt. You've got the guy coming off of, two less than 60-second knockouts in Pavlovich, and they're hanging plus 145 on him. My alarm bells are going off, guys. And last week I had a couple of alarm bell spots, and they saved me money to just go ahead and let those spots sail on by me, because I understand why everybody's betting Pavlovich. I understand why everybody wants this heavyweight that's got freakishly fast hands, who's coming up here and looks like he's going to be able to stuff takedowns, look like he's going to be able to knock anybody out that he connects with. He's got a speed advantage over almost everybody at this weight class. But we haven't seen jack shit from him, right? Like, you've got Shamil Abdurakhimov. I respect the hell out of that guy, but he's old. You got Derek Lewis. Looks like he's almost ready to hang them up, and he went in there and swung fisties with this guy. That's a bad move. Same exact thing with Tai Tuivasa. Before that, it was Maurice Green and Marcelo Gom, who are complete bums and not in the UFC anymore, that he knocked out in round one. The first real fighter he fought, James, and I know young kids getting a vet lesson, it happens, right? It was back in 2018. Alistair Overeem got him to the ground and took him out. Curtis Blaydes is a wrestling specialist. Curtis Blaydes gets everybody to the ground, and he's relentless with his takedowns. I've been saying for a long time that I think Sergey needs to be audited by a grappler. I've been saying I want to see him defend a takedown from one of these guys who's a legitimate grappling threat at the heavyweight division. Wasn't expecting him to get paired up with Blaydes at the time, but here we are. I kind of think Curtis Blaydes might be flying a little bit under the radar as the favorite here. The first fight with Francis Ngannou, the doctor stoppage was because his eye swelled shut. This guy's actually got a chin on him. It wasn't because he was out cold. It wasn't because he couldn't tank the damage. It was because his face swelled up. And he did get deaded by Derek Lewis. I understand that. But if he sets up his shots just a little bit more intelligently, I want to see what Sergey Pavlovich looks like in the second round, James. That's all I'm saying. I don't know if I'm even going to have a bet on this fight, quite frankly, but it wouldn't surprise me one bit if Curtis Razor Blaydes pulled a Max Holloway and reminded us who the fuck he is on Saturday and says, it's my belt, it's my title, it's my division. This guy's flashy striking is not going to get in my way. I think Blaydes might actually be the side. No bet at this point again, but it might be Blaydes for me, James. What do you think?
Once again, totally agree with you here. I'm glad you brought up.
I thought you were going to disagree with me.
No. Look. Like, I think that we're running, like, this very much reminds me of last weekend's main event, in the sense that, like, I heard a lot of people saying Max is done, it's over. Arnold Allen's here, he's going to knock him out. All this stuff, not even looking at the fact that Max has never been finished in his career, like by knockout, anyways. I know he's been submitted. And Curtis, like, okay, yeah, he's lost. I'm glad you brought that up. The only time he's been knocked out cold was Derek Lewis, and Curtis did the worst thing you can do. He had his head dip down, and Lewis was landing an uppercut. Same thing happened with Fabricio Verdum and Junior Dos Santos ages ago. Look up that fight. Exact same type of finish, where, like, you're literally doing the worst thing you can do. Your opponent's doing the best thing you can do. 9 times out of 10, Curtis Blaydes and Derek Lewis fight each other. Curtis Blaydes is probably winning that fight, in my opinion. He's a very good fighter. So really, he's only lost to Ngannou twice, and he lost, obviously, got knocked out by Lewis, but people talk about him having a bad chin because of the way he speaks, but that's because he's had a stutter forever. So people just assume it's CTE. I see this all the time. And Curtis is like, no, it's like, I have a stutter. It's whatever. So people, I think that's part of what's playing into this, is that people think like Curtis has taken way too much damage. He's had 3 knockout losses in however many fights he's had. He's had 20 fights, 3 knockout losses. Those are good odds, right? If you're thinking about who he's fought as well. He's fought guys like Mark Hunt and defeated him. He's fought guys like JDS and defeated him, who has knockout power. So these are guys that, again, would have posed a threat. And I know, listen, I know Pavlovich has got the great knockout power, but I'm glad you brought that up. Again, Derek Lewis was not the same Derek Lewis that Curtis Blaydes fought, right? Derek Lewis has been on the decline. Tai Tuivasa probably shouldn't have even taken that fight because he got knocked out by Cyril Gahn not that long before that fight went. So there was
a questionably short turnaround.
Yeah, so there was some thoughts about that too. I'm not saying that Pavlovich isn't good. He like, listen, we could very much be talking about on Monday a Sergey Pavlovich first or second round knockout. I'm not oblivious to that. Okay. I want to be clear about that because people think like, oh, you're just, you're overlooking Sergey. No, it's not. I'm not overlooking that at all. I just don't have enough evidence of him beating top level competition for me to say he's going to beat Blaydes. And you're wondering about the odds. Blaydes has been in the UFC for a long time. He's beat some really good guys in that span, right? And he's only lost, like I said, 2 guys in the entire UFC. That's it. That's why he's the favorite. With Pavlovich, when he came in the UFC, he had the debut against Overeem, who, by the way, who do you think helped Overeem get ready for that fight? It was Curtis Blaydes. So there's some insight there, right? Like these two, like, in terms of the matchup and everything. And, you said it there, and I think a lot of other fighters feel the same way. Blaydes is one of the best heavyweights in the world, and I think he's going to show that on Saturday. I think he survives the early onslaught from Pavlovich, and I think he potentially either gets a late finish or he ends up taking it on the scorecards. But, with the title on the line, I think he's going to really push potentially a title on the line, a title shot, I should say. I think Blaydes goes for broke and gets a late finish. But that's the other thing. Like, Pavlovich might be looking good early on. How's he going to look in rounds 4 and 5? We just have not seen a lot of that. And we have seen that with Blaydes, not to mention the guy trains at elevation. Curtis Blaydes, 4th or 5th round stoppage or decision. That's how I'm going with him in this fight.
I honestly really like that late KO call, James, because we know Blaydes' ground and pound is nothing to mess with. And I know, again, I'm going to cause some serious uproar here with this one. I think Pavlovich may be mentally weak. Like, I think he's a good hammer and he might be a bad nail. And again, I might be reading too far into the Overeem fight, but the way he reacted when he was not the one in the driver's seat was very concerning to me. There's a very good chance that you will not be in the driver's seat if Curtis Blaydes is the one taking you down. And I'm going to short it here just a little bit, though, James. I think it's going to be 2nd or 3rd round. I don't think Pavlovich has the will or the gas to survive for 3 rounds with Curtis Blaydes on top of him. If he's stepping forward and swinging missiles the way that he does, he's either going to win by knockout early like he has, or he's going to end up underneath Blaydes. And I just don't think Blaydes lets him survive more than 10 minutes.
Yeah, I could see it for sure. Kind of like what happened with Dawkins, right? In that fight too, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we could see something similar there. I also forgot to mention, I did interview Curtis Blaydes. So if you want some insight into that, I think I'm the only guy who's interviewed him before this fight, at least so far, other than the media stuff. So if you guys are looking for some Curtis Blaydes insight, check it out on my channel, youtube.com/LynchOnSports under the UFC Vegas 71 playlist.
Perfect. And just so you guys know, I use James every single week. I follow that exact thread where he gets all the interviews with some of these highlighted fighters. It's James and it's JHK for me. I listen to both your guys' work basically consistently, and you guys seem to fill the gaps. When one has one, the other one, if one doesn't have an interview, the other one seems to. So make sure you guys check out both those guys. They do great work for us here, and I will definitely be listening to that Blaydes interview. I try to leave, especially when you come on the show, James, I ignore everything you do for like 3 straight weeks to make sure I'm not like spoiling our conversation here on the show. So I'll go back and I'll definitely check all of that out. But thank you again, man, for coming on the show and breaking this one down with me. I know you just told people where to find that interview, but if there's anything else you've got coming up, if there's any other shows or anything, feel free to go ahead and shout out where people can find or support you now.
First and foremost, thank you for having me on, Clint. One of these days, we're going to link up. I'm going to go to Arizona. We're going to go see a Coyotes game. It's got to happen. It was supposed to happen this year, but I don't know what's going on with your Airbnb prices over there in Scottsdale. They were ridiculous. I ended up going to Vegas. It was cheaper. That's a whole other story. But
how sad is that? Vegas is cheaper than Arizona. What are they doing?
It was just for what we were getting, right? Like we were getting a lot more if we were going to go to Vegas. So we ended up going there. Anyways, Lynch on Sports. Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Also have a second YouTube channel, youtube.com/LynchMMA. That's for like my prospect interviews and a couple of my UFC interviews as well that I put on there too. But yeah, I have playlists. I make it easy for you guys. So every event I go through, I take all my interviews that are from different outlets and I put them in that one playlist. So I've got things like that. I've got the pros picks in there too, where I ask fighters, their pick in the main event on Saturday. And I usually do that for every main event. And I also have a show I do called Early Look, where I go through a bunch of different stats and I give you my preview and pick. So I did an in-depth preview of Curtis Blaydes and Sergey Pavlovich as well. If you want some more insight there, maybe there's some stuff you're thinking about and trying to figure it out and everything like that. And also, got to mention this, the timing of me being on here, very interesting. Who did I interview today, Clint, that just won on the weekend that is going to be published on this very channel here for Pub Sports? Who do you think won impressively that you're a big fan of? I got an interview with today.
None other than gotta be Team Judge Jillian Robertson.
You got it. Yeah.
And she's going to be on the Pub Sports radio channel. You love to see it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, interview's already done. They just have to post it. So I did it today. So
I will definitely be checking that one out. She looked fantastic at 115, James. I've been saying it for years. I interviewed her back when I first started the podcast, when I thought I wanted to be you, or I thought I wanted to be Ariel Helwani. I started with fighter interviews, and Jillian was one of the very first to give me the time of day. And that's why I've been such a fan of her all this time. I know everyone thinks it's because I'm obsessed with redheads. It's actually because she gave me the time of day when I was a nobody, and I've been on the train ever since. I love to hear that. And I've been saying she would be amazing at 115 where she had the power advantage. I can't wait to see what she does in this new weight class. That's going to be great.
There you go. Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us here on the show again tonight. And those of you that have made it to this point in the show, I do want to apologize. I don't feel like tonight was my A game. No fault of James's, obviously. My grandfather actually was in the hospital last week, and I took an emergency shotgun trip out to California this weekend to go get some affairs in order and take care of him and check him out and make sure he was okay and things like that. So I actually did all of my research for this card in the car. My dad drove home so I could be on my phone researching these fights. So I do apologize if I missed something, if I wasn't as clear or concise as I usually am. This was not my best effort, and I do apologize to you guys for that. Family first, and he's doing okay, though. I know a lot of you, I mentioned it on the Friday show that was going on. So for those of you who have been checking up and do care, thank you very much for the well wishes. He's doing much better. Obviously, we were able to come home. He's good. He got out. So things are much better in that area. And we're looking forward to life settling down and getting back to the usual routine. So appreciate all you guys for real. That's all I've got for you. But, just one of those things where folks, give your people hugs. Tomorrow's never something that's promised. You never know when something's going to go sideways. I didn't think my granddad was going to get out of the hospital this weekend. I really didn't. It's kind of miraculous that he did. They took 10 pounds of water off of his lungs. I thought he was a goner. If there's somebody you haven't talked to that you love and care about, just check on them. You never know that you're going to get that opportunity next time. So be good to your people, surround yourselves with good people, and treat everybody with kindness. I know it's harder to do in this day and age than it used to be. Maybe everyone's kind of angry. Everyone's kind of a dick, especially online. But if you can, be the bigger person, turn the other cheek, just don't respond. That's totally okay to just ignore a mean comment. But if you can, put some extra light out there. I promise it'll get returned by the other people doing the same thing. Have a great week, everybody. Good luck on all your degenerate action. Let's roll.